czy magazynowych. Jednym słowem, czy jest to narzędzie, czy jest to dopiero baza do dyskusji merytorycznej, dyskusji filozoficznej, można powiedzieć, na uniwersytetach czy na takich panelach jak tutaj?
Well, it's clearly addressed to the big money. Not even to people, but to the big money, to the institutional money. And the objective is to move institutional money in a big scale into the green investments. So what it delivers to institutional investors is a specific tool where they can actually analyze their individual properties, comparing the 16 indicators to the market average, and find out where is the gap. Tenant satisfaction in shopping centers. Well, the shopping center is energy efficient, but tenants are not happy. What's the problem with the tenant satisfaction? It's a social issue. So they find a gap there, and they can focus their management attention to those areas which pay out most in the cash flow, in the growing rents. So it's a management tool for institutional investors to find out where to focus their management attention in all these complex and messy discussions of sustainability.
W raporcie zbadaliście kilkanaście, jak nie kilkadziesiąt krajów, tam było bodajże 23 kraje, jeżeli dobrze pamiętam, tak? Jak Polska ma się na tej mapie Europy? Wzięliście pod uwagę również polski rynek. Pamiętajmy o tym, że budynki w Polsce nie mają tego certyfikatu jeszcze. Nie wszystkie. Wspomniał Pan o tym, że te nowoczesne, owszem, jak najbardziej. Natomiast te sprzed 10 i więcej lat, one po prostu tego certyfikatu nie mają. Jak sobie z tym problemem poradziliście? Bo to jest rzecz, którą czy można uwzględnić, czy w ogóle nie braliście tego pod uwagę?
As you can remember, 2010, when that data was collected, there was in Poland, there was, I think Hans told me yesterday, who made these premium use certifications in Poland, most of them, that 2010 they had about first one or very few were in the market. So we did not have enough data to actually assess Poland 2010 in terms of certification. But what we can say, it's not by accident that this fair is here in Poland. For me, it's absolutely clear. It's a fundamental reason for that, because institutional investment money is collected in Poland to build these new developments. And why are they certified? The institutional money is shy. That's the fear that the economy, the currency, a number of political risks, the electricity production in the country, a number of things are quite uncertain in this market. So to compensate this uncertainty of the investment, you need a certification on a high level to signal good quality, to be sure that the money is really well invested, and balancing this uncertainty of the macro fundamentals, the certified green buildings make a fantastic tool to attract international money to the Polish market. So for me it's absolutely clear that Poland has the highest density of green building certificates across Europe now. But that was not seen 2010. That's something that we will prove, we will be able to prove, I hope, when we collect the data for the next 3 to 5 years, where we're now building up a time series to see how things change.
Jasne. Powiedział Pan o tym, że jest duża podaż, tak? Tych budynków, dużo ich powstaje. Jak, odnosząc się trochę do pańskiej gry, do idei pańskiej gry, jak to jest z tym popytem na to? Czy polscy przedsiębiorcy, polskie firmy poszukują tego typu budynków, czy jednak poszukują oszczędności? Jednym słowem idą jednak do tych mniej nowoczesnych, mniej zielonych, nazwijmy to w cudzysłowie, budynków.
Now it comes to the tricky question. It's probably not the Polish who really are the drivers of this responsible tenant market. It's more the international tenants who simply have to report to their headquarters how many green square meters did they rent this year, and they have to put this in their annual report and report it to their headquarters in Western countries. So Poland as such would probably not provide such a good ground for sustainable investment If not, the tenants would be international tenants, having to comply with higher social responsibility in their home countries. So it's actually an interplay between tenants, international tenants, and international money being invested in Poland.
Jednym słowem, jest jeszcze ogromny potencjał, ponieważ jak wiemy, ogromna większość polskiego PKB tworzą małe i średnie przedsiębiorstwa, te małe polskie firmy, oczywiście wielkie korporacje też, ale ogromna większość to są właśnie te małe firmy, więc tutaj mamy ten handicap, tak? Mamy ten potencjał, który dopiero będzie wchodził na rynek, mówiąc wprost. Chciałbym zadać pytanie, Mr. Smithing. Pan reprezentuje firmę, która zajmuje się zarządzaniem i wynajmowaniem, ale przede wszystkim zarządzaniem i administrowaniem nieruchomości. Jak to wygląda? Jesteście ogromną korporacją, macie, no właśnie, działacie właściwie na tych wszystkich krajach, które badał pan profesor. Jak to wygląda? Czy te zielone budynki rzeczywiście znajdują zainteresowanie najemców i jak to wygląda w innych krajach? Po pierwsze, a po drugie, jak to wygląda, jeśli chodzi o cenę? Czy jednym słowem jest popyt na to i czy jest zainteresowanie, jak to wygląda w innych krajach? Jeżeli mógłby pan tak w skrócie to scharakteryzować.
What we see is, I think, very much what the professor said. Demand for green buildings, it generally comes from the more international companies. We see that being an important part of the market throughout Central and Eastern Europe, where the Class A office markets today are still very dominated by international tenants. That's less the case in Poland today than it is really anywhere further south of here. It's not so much the case in Moscow, where the market has been a little bit slow to take off. From the investor's standpoint, these are exactly the tenants that you want to capture, because they're the tenants that have the financial background and will be able to pay the rent every month. Whether they're actually making the money in Poland or Hungary or not, they're going to pay the rent. They have that stable background. So from an investor's standpoint, you have a better investment. Your building is worth more because of the stability of the tenant. Now, the question, will they pay any more? No. It's nice to put, we leased a green building in your annual report, but it's not as nice as saying, we saved money. You want to save money, these companies are there to make a profit, not to green the earth. I think going back to where we started, it has to be profitable. What we do see, again, impacting the value of the buildings on the ground, is that the buildings are more attractive. So if you have like for like, and let's face it, this is real estate, there's very little of like for like, but a building that for any particular tenant, 2 buildings, generally 2 to 3 buildings will be on their short list. They're all okay. They meet the requirements as far as location. They're quite similar in price. The building that has the certification that's greener is likely to be the building that the tenants choose. So we're seeing faster lease-up periods in green buildings. We're seeing less rental voids because they're stickier. Tenants will have a higher tendency to stay in buildings which have been certified than buildings that haven't. It's harder to take them out of the building. So you're improving the cash flow, not by the rent per square meter, but the long-term cash flow. And that, again, is impacting the value of the building. So you've got a building that's more attractive to the investors. There is that extra value, which, if we say out of 10 investors, there are 8 that will ask the question every time, is your building certified? It's easier to get it past credit committee. Will it kill the deal if they don't have it? For 5 of those 8, no. For 3 of them, might only be buying sustainable buildings today. 5 of them, it's easier to get it past credit committee. It's easier to work the building in the process. 2 of them aren't going to care. So what that also means is that you have a higher demand for a green building, which will have some impact on the yield. Again, increasing, has downward pressure on yield, increasing pressure on the price of the building.
A jak to wygląda? Tak, jak to wygląda z punktu widzenia działalności w takiej firmy jak wasza, mówiąc krótko, czy zarządzanie takim budynkiem jest droższe? Czy trzeba mieć odpowiednie certyfikaty? Czy osoba zarządzająca, myślę już o konkretnych osobach, czy oni muszą być lepiej wykształceni, inaczej wykształceni? Jednym słowem, czy są droższymi pracownikami, a tym samym czy zarządzanie jest droższe? Czy to są jednak niuanse, które w skali takiej firmy jak wasza są no, do wyrównania, że tak się wyrażę, i nie ma to większego znaczenia?
Management of green buildings is not any more expensive today. What is required to manage a building sustainably is attention and thought. So do people have to be more intelligent? Well, we hire intelligent people, yes? The question is whether we challenge them to think. And from market to market, the amount that property and facility managers are challenged to think about their job and to take some initiative varies considerably. The impact of the financial crisis has actually had a notable effect across the region. In Hungary, where I live and have quite a bit of experience on the ground, the impact has been very deep. Hungary got hit by that, then we've been kicked by politicians, that's another story, but Hungary has not been a success story for the past 5 years. Rents and costs have been under incredible pressure. That means generally when I go to look at a building and help them to make it sustainable and certify it for existing buildings, they've already been through their BMS and questioned, well, do the fans need to run 24/7? Why do I have my air handling unit running at 2 a.m. on Saturday, Sunday? Yeah. In Poland, there was never a recession. There hasn't been that same pressure, and so I'll go and look at buildings oftentimes, and the air handling units are running 24/7. I had a situation yesterday. We were doing an audit of a building here in Warsaw, probably a couple kilometers from here, and the person who was doing the audit said, you implemented the changes to your building operating plan at the end of April. We have weekly data. He could see which week it was because the energy noticeably dropped from that point on by about a third. Yeah?
Jednym słowem, Polacy mają gest, mówiąc krótko, tak? Ale to jest, a mówiąc poważnie, to znaczy, że znowu tutaj mówimy o potencjale oszczędności, tak? Tutaj mówimy o polskim rynku, możemy jeszcze zaoszczędzić bardzo dużo energii, a tym samym pieniędzy. Natomiast chciałbym spytać jeszcze, panie profesorze, wspomniał pan o tym, że już wkrótce te zielone budynki, tak to nazywamy potocznie, czyli zrównoważone budownictwo będzie standardem. Jak pan sądzi, rozmawiacie na pewno bardzo często na tego typu konferencjach, mówimy o przyszłości 5, 10, 15 lat. Kiedy to się zacznie dziać? Kiedy to będzie standardem?
Well, it actually is. It just depends on which sector, which game you want to play. If you want to play with the ignorance, will never become standard for the ignorance because they like to gamble and that's a good business for them. You will always find these cars in the streets which are not even allowed to run. And the same with the buildings. You will always find a market of brown buildings, green buildings, and tomorrow I'm speaking Austria, they have even blue buildings. So there is there's a movement in sustainability. And if you would look back to residential, and you would say, what is a responsibility in an apartment? Does the toilet have to be in the apartment or can it be in the backyard? You still find people in certain countries who accept the toilet in the backyard because they get a cheaper apartment. But most of us prefer the toilet to be in the apartment, and then we say this is just the standard. We don't discuss it anymore because it's the standard. It's now the question how many toilets you have in the apartment. Does any room have its own toilet? Can girls and boys use the same toilet? Or do they need separate toilets? What I want to say is that the standard is already there. It's not that at a special moment in time, everything becomes green. It's such a complex set of qualities that is now emerging that for certain parties, it's already a deal killer if you don't have a certificate sitting on it. And for other parties in the market, it's not relevant at all. But that means that the upper sector of the prime investments moves further and every day gets higher requirements on sustainability. But that doesn't mean that the lower quality in the market will disappear. It will just suffer from discounts in the rents, but that's fine for those who want to make the savings.
Jasne, to troszeczkę zaczyna nas czas gonić, bardzo, bardzo ciekawa rozmowa nam się nawiązuje. Michael, czy masz jakieś pytanie do pana profesora, bo wiem, że wcześniej przygotowując się do tego panelu, tych pytań mieliśmy mnóstwo, więc bardzo proszę, chwila dla ciebie.
Well, I do have a number of questions actually, but one of the primary ones, this is for big money. And if we look at the report and the individual factors that are the individual components of the Sustainability Alpha, it seems that the big components are the macroeconomic components. That's where you get big chunks and big swings. And then on what you can do on an asset specific level, there's little teeny chunks. So you do this and you can have a little improvement. Now my question is, if I'm an institutional investor, I'm looking where to put my money, shouldn't I just go for the big impact? Shouldn't I say, okay, well, I'm going to invest where the good macro systems are, and then later I can play with my Sustainability Alpha and play with my asset? Or should I look for the good, does it really make sense to look at asset specific? Look, this one's really doing well, we'll invest here, even though the market isn't doing well?
Clearly the answer is, first of all, it's an investment. So the fundamentals of investment have not changed. And what we found in these 23 economies is that the fundamentals are the most relevant drivers of the sustainability movement as well. For example, take the expected rate of return. If we have this low interest environment with, say, 3 to 5 to 6% return on a property, you need 20, 30 years to bring the money back which you have spent on the development. If we would get back to the high interest rate environment and high expected property returns in the 2 digits, say 12%, 15%, you would need about 5 to 8 years to bring your money back invested in such a development. And we found that those guys who go for the quick return are less interested in future generations. So depending on the interest environment, the relevance of sustainability is clearly driven by the economic fundamentals. That is the first. And the second then, obviously, is the living standard. If GDP is not growing, your building might be not even green, but dark green. It will not help because tenants will not be able to spend more cash flow for a better property. So clearly the investment fundamentals are still the investment fundamentals, and that's why we included these. And I think I'm very happy that this is probably the only study on financials and sustainability which looks at the fundamentals as well. And clearly in the chart you see the biggest are really the old-fashioned investment fundamentals, and the rest is just a side game of it.
One of the things that I've seen and I talk to people a lot about is the impact of sustainability on value. I talked about it a little bit earlier. I threw out some impacts. I said, if you have buildings that are a similar location, a similar price, the sustainable ones likely to be more important. But that's factor number 3. Yes, this is real estate that's not going to change. The thing they taught us when I started 20 plus years ago was, okay, location, location, location. Then look at price, And then, okay, now we can afford to look at sustainability. So you're saying that that really hasn't changed, and Sustainability Alpha is going to help us to increase the value in that small margin where we have some room to play.
It hasn't changed in the market overall, but if you want to participate in this positive sum game, obviously it's a deal killer. If these 40 guys, they're not allowed to participate in a gamble or in an uninformed investment decision. So they have in their very early due diligence for any development or transaction, they have a filter which says, please answer these questions on sustainability. And if the information is not there, the deal is gone. So for this, say, responsible sector of the market, it's actually a deal killer already now. It hasn't been a few years ago, but it's now. And the bet is actually, is this a growing part of the market? Or is this just a bubble which is going to disappear with the high interest rates? So that is what we're going to see if we look at the years to come.
Okej, drodzy Państwo, zostało nam właściwie minutka bądź dwie, więc pytania z sali. Bardzo bym prosił, czy jakieś wątpliwości, jakieś pytania zrodziły się w Państwa głowach i bardzo proszę. Rzadka okazja, aby zadać pytanie panu profesorowi. Bardzo proszę tutaj.
Ja mam pytanie, czy są jakieś badania porównujące, jaki jest zysk
Sekundkę, już mikrofon do pani idzie, dobrze? Sekundka.
Mam pytanie, czy były badania prowadzone dotyczące obniżenia kosztów eksploatacyjnych w budynkach zrównoważonych, w budynkach posiadających certyfikację, czyli doską czy birimowską, w stosunku do analogicznych budynków, gdzie tych zabiegów dla zrównoważonego budowania nie było i zrównoważonego zarządzania również? Jaki to jest procent, jeśli chodzi o koszta eksploatacyjne mniej? A jaki to jest procent, jeśli chodzi o koszta inwestycyjne więcej?
Yeah, that's a very helpful question because it shows the difference between relevant and irrelevant issues. Many people think cost savings are a driver for green buildings. And we clearly found in this 124 billion euro portfolio, we clearly found no evidence that the guys who want to capture the premiums are those who want to save on energy cost, reduce their comfort, or they care about service charges and stuff like that. This is really not relevant when it comes to capture the big premiums. This is about the billions to be invested and how to save that money for the decades to come. The value of the building is in billions, and the savings is then in 10 or 100 thousands. So it's not about savings, it's about creating an added value. There is research also on residential, and on residential it's very easy to understand. Those people who rent an apartment at the lowest energy cost is probably not those people you want to have in your apartment as tenants. You want to have those people who can afford to pay the best rent. So it is not about cost savings. And especially if we see the latest developments in energy production with the fracking and all that stuff around it, we see it's not the cost of the energy that's actually driving green investments. That is clearly not the driver. But a good question, because you would assume that this would be relevant, but not for the investors, probably just for the property managers who then in the daily business try to do the best out of it. That's clearly not about cost, but about value.
Czy ta odpowiedź panią usatysfakcjonowała?
Nie.
Nie.
Nie, ponieważ pan nie odpowiedział na moje pytanie. Pan mówił o wartości dodanej, ale ja się pytałam w sposób taki, jak rozumuje project manager. To wcale nie znaczy, że ja tracę motywację do zielonego budownictwa. Ja chcę po prostu wiedzieć, planując swoją inwestycję i jej zwrot w czasie. Na przykład biurowca, ponieważ budynki mieszkaniowe są specyficzne, budynki handlowe są specyficzne. Na przykładzie obiektów biurowego. Ile kosztuje więcej, a ile eksploatacja kosztuje mniej? Być może wcale, ale chciałabym to wiedzieć.
Może Pan Smytnik odpowie na to pytanie jako osoba, która zajmuje się zarządzaniem tych nieruchomości. To jest chyba dobra osoba, którą mamy na sali na szczęście. Także bardzo proszę, Michael.
I'm not actually a manager, but I deal a lot with this question. And there's two sides of it. Okay, you can reduce your energy bills by approximately 20 to 30% by reducing what you're supplying to meet the actual needs of your tenants. Generally, when we turn on a building, there's probably about 30% excess capacity in your BMS that assures that your tenants never have any complaints. Oh, guess what? They complain anyway, and you're wasting a lot of money. So the easiest thing to do, you can reduce your energy costs about 30%. That might be 30 to 40 euro cents that you're saving. I can save a lot of money with a very, very quick payback on water reduction. And we talked a little bit about the importance of reducing water use globally earlier today. Payback 4 to 5 months. But guess what? 2 euro cents per square meter per month. It in a very real sense, it doesn't matter. If you really get into waste reduction and selective sorting, there might be a couple euro cents there. But if we add all that up, we're at 40, 45 euro cents. It's in what I call the margin of disbelief that we all have as tenants for developers. Yeah, they're going to say, oh yes, it's 4 euros, it's 4.50 per square meter per month on account, and we'll reconcile at the end of the year. How much do we believe this building versus that building? The amount that we're saving is within that margin. So yes, there is a potential savings, and yes, it can be important, but that's not the driver for tenants. And tenants actually look at this, that question comes a lot from tenants. The real reason for a tenant to choose a green building is productivity increases. Because if you can improve the productivity of your staff by 1 to 2%, that means that they're working that much longer. It's about a week a year per employee that you can get. Or if you've got a big call center, you need 1 to 2% less staff. Put that back rentalize that, and all of a sudden your numbers are 4. Yeah, that's actually 3-4 euros per square meter per month that you're saving. That's the real motivation for tenants to moving into these buildings.
Okej, bardzo dziękuję. Gdyby były jeszcze jakieś pytania, gdyby pani chciała...